Good afternoon folks, this is Bath Street in Glasgow and this is Robertson House where JRF in Scotland has its office space, and this is where we have been one part of the Matrix team putting together the Scotland Autumn campaign along with Eleanor, Craig and colleagues in York, and we should start by saying a massive thank you to everyone who's been part of what we're about to talk about for Challenge Poverty Week and the SNP conference. So now we're inside Robertson House. This is room 2, our favourite meeting room, where a lot of the thinking and planning takes place. And here is the JRF mug, and I'm going to flip this round so you can see me right now. Now, one thing we're doing for the first time, thanks to Craig and Luke and colleagues, is we're going to have a Scotland podcast. In the Is Anyone Listening series, we thought Challenge Poverty Week in Scotland was a good opportunity. And last week we had Kenny Farquharson of The Times, well-known journalist here in Scotland, hosting that podcast, and our own Deborah and also Peter Kelly from Poverty Alliance taking part in the podcast. It is well worth a listen. It's a really great job's been done in that. Well done to everyone. And it also draws upon some audio material from a film clip that was produced for our Framing for Influence event back in June, and this is where members of Dundee's Poverty Truth Commission, it's called Dundee Fighting for Fairness, talk about their experience of coming together, identifying stigma, money and mental health as their priorities for Dundee, and they talk about the process of influencing change through the city's partnership, and how they plan to go on doing that. So it's a really good listen. Kenny is a Dundee man originally, so that was of interest to him, and there's a really interesting exchange as part of the podcast where Deborah challenges Kenny to think about how the media portrays and talks about poverty. So it's well worth a listen as part of this series of events and reports that I'm going to talk about. Hi folks. So we're just on the eve of Challenge Poverty Week, which starts next Monday, and we're partnering with the Poverty Alliance again this year, and they're telling us already it's the biggest event by the number of organisations and events taking place. Almost all local authorities in Scotland are taking part this year. And I wanted to just say a few words about what we're planning, because we've got a very ambitious programme of events and publications, and say a bit about why we're doing it. And also, apologies I'm not there today in person, but hopefully this tech workaround will give you a flavour of what we're doing. So the first thing to say is we've got really strong publications on each of our thematic outcomes. So today, or yesterday when you see this, we've published our second report on the Scottish Child Payment, and this has been a partnership with IPPR Scotland, which has brought together some analytical support. We've been involved with discussion groups with 8 groups of parents, different organisations across Scotland, looking at how to shape this policy opportunity which the Scottish Government announced back in June, and is the first major use of new social security powers within devolution, which is estimated it will bring between 20 and 30,000 children, that's between 2 and 3 percentage points, children out of poverty by the time it's fully rolled out. And that report's now available. It's on our website. We're holding an event next Monday morning here in Robertson House to mark the start of Challenge Poverty Week, and we will have there parents who've helped to shape that report and told us about the design principles they think are important. For example, about how often that should be paid, what we can do to fill in gaps around school meals, free school meals when schools are on holiday, some really practical and we think affordable design improvements that can be made to the Scottish Child Payment. I want to acknowledge as well that Emma has led the analysis side of that with support from colleagues in economics, evidence and impact, and Deborah has spearheaded the public involvement work. So it's been a real team effort, and we've had a great partnership with IPPR as part of that programme. So that's a little bit about what Social Security could do to contribute to reducing poverty, but we know already that that will not get us there, even to the interim targets around child poverty over the next few years. So what else? Also on Monday, we'll be publishing a report by Emma, which is Poverty in Scotland 2019. And that looks at the story of poverty over the 20 years of devolution. And it highlights a really significant finding, which has come through Emma's analysis, which really is about the story of housing policy, housing tenure and rent setting in Scotland relative to England and Wales, which tells us that gradually during the devolution years and accelerating in recent years, lower social rents, a larger social rented sector, even though it has reduced in size, fewer people living in the private rented sector, even though that has doubled in size, and to a small degree, more people owning their homes outright. All these factors, which the economists tell me are compositional factors in Scotland, all of them have given an important advantage to Scotland, which gives us what DWP have told us is a statistically significant advantage in terms of smaller rate of poverty after housing costs. As a result, it's about 2 percentage points lower. When you look at children, it's 6 percentage points lower, so it's quite a big difference. Explained after housing costs, it's not there before housing costs, so it's not about income and earnings underlying. So if housing is doing quite a lot of heavy lifting so far to keep poverty lower in Scotland, even though it's followed the same trend as the rest of the UK because of Social Security changes at Westminster, if that's the case, then our kind of broad finding is the Scottish Government needs to play its part and continue keeping the pressure on affordable housing supply and keeping social rents affordable. Currently, the commitment that's there in the programme for government runs up to the election in 2021. Beyond that, none of us knows. There are lots of hints that government thinks it can't continue to invest at the level it is currently, and so there's a risk that the gains we see through housing will start to unravel if we don't protect that investment. So next Monday, that's our report being published. We hope to cause a splash, and that will be the centrepiece of our Game Changers event on next Tuesday the 8th in Edinburgh. Just to say a word as well about that event as our major Challenge Poverty Week event, where we're going to have a fantastic lineup of speakers on housing, work and social security, helping us to think through solutions for the longer term, with 2030 as the deadline for achieving the child poverty targets. What more do we need to do beyond this kind of housing contribution, the Scottish Child Payment, what about work, and so on. So we've called it Game Changers because when the Scottish Child Payment was announced back in June, we said it's a golden opportunity to turn the tide on child poverty. Many others said this is a game changer. But we also want to tie this into what people tell us about their life. So in Edinburgh at the moment, where I'm chairing the Edinburgh Poverty Commission, people have been telling us they feel that the rules of the game are stacked against them. The odds are against them. They feel stuck, they feel trapped. they feel like they can't plan for the future, and in Edinburgh's case, a major part of the problem is a lack of affordable housing. People like Chris Kilkenny, who's speaking at our event next week, single dad in temporary accommodation for 2.5 years. It's really hard, excuse me, to plan your child's education, to know where you're going to be living. Chris's son had to change nursery multiple times before he even started school. So the toll that takes upon people's lives, especially when rents are often at an eye-watering level, a really important part of the story. And so we have to change the game. We have to change the odds so they are stacked in favour of people in poverty, not against them to the extent that they are currently. So that's social security and housing. The third thing to say is the day after that, we're going to be part of an event. It's not a JRF event, but an event being hosted by Standard Life in Edinburgh, bringing together employers and other stakeholders, including government, to look at in-work poverty. And that's where we get a chance to spotlight the great report that Strathclyde University have done for us, also coming out next week, on what employers know about and think about in-work poverty and what they think can be done within the workplace to tackle what we've called the challenge of our times. It's a piece of work that Louise has been leading for us. We previewed it a year ago at an event in the Homestead, so it's brilliant to see that coming out just in time for Challenge Poverty Week. So the authors, Patricia Finlay and Colin Lindsay, will speak at our event on Tuesday in the work session, and on the Wednesday they'll have a chance to share their findings, feedback to employers at that event. So we're almost there in terms of our Challenge Poverty Week events. Following all of that, the week after, we go to Aberdeen and the SNP conference, and really briefly we're doing two things there. One is a dinner discussion to coincide with the conference, where we will again have the theme of in-work poverty, and we're doing that in partnership with business in the community, who will bring some of their member organisations, and Poverty Alliance, who run the Living Wage Accreditation programme for Scotland. And we hope they will also bring some of their local employers, along with some politicians. Claire will be there at that event. Emma and I will be there, and we will have an off-the-record discussion about what Scotland can do next on in-work poverty to make sure the labour market is also playing its part in that pathway to poverty reduction over the next decade. And then finally, on the afternoon of the 15th of October, we conclude this round, you'll be glad to hear, of our programme and publications. We'll conclude with a fringe event at the SNP conference. We're doing it in partnership with the SFHA on the role of affordable housing and poverty reduction. So Deborah and colleagues at SFHA have been putting this together. We're delighted to have Aileen Campbell, who is the Cabinet Secretary for Communities and Local Government. She is lead portfolio in the Cabinet on housing, on poverty reduction. So it's absolutely the right person to be speaking at our event. We've been in to brief her this week on what our main report says on housing, and along with Aileen and Sally Thomas, who's Chief Exec of the SFHA here. We'll speak in that fringe meeting, and will be chaired by Libby Brooks from The Guardian here in Scotland. And so altogether, we hope to have lots of intelligence, new relationships, lots of ideas to take forward into our plan, to feed into the outcome groups, and think about where we go next over 2020 in the run-up to the election in May 21. So I hope that's kind of a quick run through what we're doing and why. Just to finish off by saying a massive thank you to everyone who's been part of this mini matrix for Scotland Autumn Campaign. There have been some bumps along the road, we've done some resets, but all along the way people have rolled up their sleeves and done this with incredible commitment and energy and innovation, and We're going to look forward to a retro once all this is finished. We'll have a couple of drinks on Tuesday evening as a staging post, and if the tech works, we'll now have maybe a phone call or Slack conversation with your questions. I look forward to answering those, seeing many of you in Edinburgh and Aberdeen, and thanking you properly when we get together face to face in York. So thank you for listening.